This is the brand new Arrma Limitless 120 RTR, and today we're going to see if this basher can do 120 miles an hour. But first, we need to take a closer look at this thing because there is a bunch of new stuff in here. Now, if like me, you've never seen one of these in person before, you don't know what you're missing because this thing looks absolutely wild, and I love this new color scheme. However, while things like this massive front splitter and wing, as well as rear wing and massive vertical fins look really cool, this stuff all means business. And that's because to go 120 miles an hour, you need some serious aerodynamics, and pretty much everything on this car is designed to go fast. With that being said, Arrma calls this thing a basher on the box, so we are going to try to bash it later as well. Starting back at the front, we've got these vertical fins, as well as this wing in the back. This wing's designed to create downforce. For maximum speed, we're actually going to have to trim this wing to create less downforce and drag. These side pods are designed to direct air around the wheels and tires, again, to reduce drag. And this low, sleek body is designed to create a small front profile for less drag as it moves through the air. These big vertical fins act similarly to a vertical stabilizer on an airplane, and they help keep the car going straight at high speed. And this rear wing, just like the front wing, is designed to create plenty of downforce. We're going to have to trim this to go full speed, though. There are plenty more aerodynamic bits on the underside of this car, which we'll look at in just a minute, as well as talk about why it's so hard to go fast. But before we look at that, we need to talk about how we're getting power to the ground in this beast. For top speed, we're going to have to switch to this included spool and large pinion gear, but all the way up to 120 miles an hour, we're going to be using these white D-Boots Hoons. These Hoons come in 3 different compounds. The whites are the medium. You've got gold, which are the softest, and then silver, which are the hardest. These mediums are good for all-around bashing, and I guess going 120 miles an hour. And they do feel medium hard, and are overall very good tires, though these can wear out really fast if you're not judicious with the throttle when you're bashing. That's why I went ahead and picked up a set of these fake Hoons on Amazon. I've been curious to see how these things work. They do look very, very similar, though obviously they're not made by the same company, though they do look like they're going to fit on here perfectly and should be great for general bashing. I'm curious to see how long they last, though. Behind there, we've got some things I'm kind of surprised about. To take a closer look at it, let's go ahead and get this front wing unit off of here. The screws on this are YFS, which is a good name brand, and these are good quality screws. And then on the underside, it appears as though there are a bunch of screws missing. Let me know if there's an accessory that's supposed to go on here that I'm not aware of. Okay, we need to take off more than just those 2 screws. I figured that would be the case. As we pull this front splitter off, which doesn't seem to reveal anything new, we can see that it's held on by these special washer-headed screws. These are clearly designed to hit the ground first to prevent abrasion on that splitter. That's a really nice touch to help protect these parts. The splitter itself is designed to direct air above the car and below the car and have a really sharp differentiation between those two, and that helps reduce drag. By the way, if it seems like I don't know what I'm doing with this, it's because I don't. This is my very first time taking one of these apart, so we're gonna learn together. Okay, this front end is loose, but still won't come apart. And I heard a bunch of nuts fall on the inside, so I think we need to take this area off first. All right, now we can see that front wing in this beautiful red and white livery. This almost kind of looks like a certain cigarette brand from back in the day. I'm sure that's a coincidence, though. I find it interesting that Arrma's using all of these captured nuts on the front end. Normally, to keep things simple, we're just screwing into plastic on Arrma cars, but I suspect this is stronger, and this front end's gonna be undergoing a lot of stress at 120. With those 2 screws out, this mount is free of the shock tower. Then with those 2 screws removed, the entire front skid comes right off. With that removed, we can get a better look at something that's kind of surprising on this new model to me, and that's the fact that we don't seem to have gotten most of the V6 updates, though we do have some updates. And yeah, now that I've actually taken it apart, I can see you don't need to remove all these screws to get that off the front end. Behind that, though, we've got a bunch of stuff I wasn't expecting to see on a new model, and we get a sneak peek of that beefy motor back there. These shocks are similar to what we've gotten on bashers for a really long time, though they do have unique shock caps. And pulling this pin out of here releases the shock, which is very short, has a very small amount of shock travel, and has a very stiff spring. The shock bodies themselves are what Arrma have been using on their 6S vehicles for a long time, as are the bottom perches. But these shock caps are a little bit different, as opposed to having a bladder here at the top, which can push in and out, giving us more and less room inside as the shock rod goes in and out. We try and get as much air out as possible, and then we use an emulsion of the remaining air to do the same thing. I'm not going to open this up because I don't want to change the configuration out of the box on this thing. Arrma claims it's going to do 120 miles an hour, and I don't want to give it any excuses not to. Behind that shock, we see a lot of things that are V5 Arrma, but not everything is. We do have the previous generation pillow ball knuckles, as well as the older style sway bar end links. Everything up top in the front is non-EXP, including this top plate, as well as the upper hinge pin mounts. However, inside this bulkhead are some things we've never seen before. All right, my unfamiliarity with this platform shining through again. We can't actually take this A-block off because it's being blocked by the chassis here in the bottom, but we should be able to get this bulkhead cover off without doing so. I'm actually surprised to see that these sway bar end links aren't the new style. Keeping this old style around means they have to have two different SKUs, and it really wouldn't have been any more difficult for them to update to the new style. With that sway bar out of the way, we can sneak this cover off the front. Normally now we'd be able to just pop out our differential, but these CVDs are so short that they're not letting it come out, so we'll have to take these upper arms off as well. Probably just removing one will do it. Nope, still stuck. We'll have to take them both out. Now it comes out of here, and this is the first major update we have from the roller. What we have here is the latest version of the EXP differential with the updated outdrive cups, but we have a brand new ring and pinion with a new ratio. This is 42-15, while pretty much everything else is 43-10. This is a much lower ratio, and of course is designed to get a higher top speed. Inside here, we can feel that we definitely do have the limited slip plates. I don't want to take this apart, again, to maintain that originality for the 120-mile-an-hour pass, but to explain quickly, half the plates are tied to the case and half the plates are tied to the output cup through the side gear. When the two wheels want to spin independently from each other like this, as in you're going around a corner, they can be fairly open, but when they try to spin independently while being driven, those plates are squished together by the axial forces of the gears, and it helps lock those sides together, creating a limited slip functionality. Based on the parts breakdown, it appears as though we have limited slip in the front and in the rear, as well as in the center. Being driven by that differential appears to be standard CVDs, though these are quite a bit shorter than on most other cars. And we've got a teeny tiny 6061 aluminum shock tower. Behind that is another thing that kind of surprises me. We have the original old style steering system. I suspect that might be to give enough room for this giant motor, as the new style is a little bit thicker. Speaking of this new motor, let me get this front end put back together and let's take a look at these awesome electronics. And speaking of those electronics, we've got the same 8S V2 ESC we get in the big 1/5 scale vehicles. Controlling that's a receiver in a receiver box that we don't see on any other Arrma vehicle. And inside that box, which is made waterproof using the same method we see on the 3S Arrmas, is an SR6200 full AVC receiver. That receiver, combined with this full-fat DX3 transmitter, means we get an adjustable gyro, which I definitely will be taking advantage of. And as you can see, they've put Limitless labels on this thing. That's the same thing they did on the Quake, and this is something that should have been done a long time ago. Fantastic touch. Behind that receiver is the Spectrum S665 steel-geared servo. This is the best servo that Arrma uses on their 1/8 scale cars, though I am a little bit surprised to see that it's rubber mounted in this particular application. I would suspect that steering precision is the most important thing on this, and rubber mounting the servo is going to take away some of that precision. Of course, having a gyro definitely will help put some back. The real star of the show is going to be this new motor. Let me whip this thing out of here and see what it looks like. If you're going to be taking this apart yourself, you need to be really careful. This doesn't have the latest version screws, and these still can strip out if they've got too much thread locker on them. Fortunately, mine don't seem to have much on there at all, though we will probably be adding a little bit more than this. With those two screws removed, we should be able to just slide this right out of here. This is about the biggest motor they could fit in this chassis. It's 1450 kV. It does have an 8mm shaft on it. And then if we can get these three screws off for this rear end bell, we can take a look inside. By the way, if you're enjoying this, make sure you get subscribed because we've got some really cool stuff coming, including a massive 50,000 subscriber giveaway. And the quicker you subscribe, the quicker we hit that 50K. With that end bell off, you can see we have an NNS branded high-speed bearing. This one's made in Thailand, and it's nice to see a branded bearing in here. And then you can see we've got a fairly standard looking set of windings and a balanced rotor down in here. This motor does appear to be Kevlar wrapped as opposed to having a metal shield around it. Having that metal shield around it probably makes the rotor stronger, but it could also make the motor weaker by blocking some of the magnetic field. The windings do come straight out and they are terminated out here at these connectors. That makes the wire stiff, but it means there isn't an extra connection in here. And by the way, unless you have a very specific reason to, I don't recommend you take your motor apart, though at least with this motor, the screws are big enough that they don't strip out really, really easily, but it is possible to mess things up if you do take one of these apart. Hiding behind that motor is a metal cased EXP differential, and again, this does have the slipper plates in it, so that should improve rear traction by reducing front end ballooning. Though again, for the really serious stuff, we have a spool which eliminates that differential altogether, and that'll lock the front and rear end together, making sure we get maximum power down to the ground. Moving backward from the center differential, we've got two big saddle battery trays. I'll show you what we're going to be putting in those in just a second. And then flipping this around, this really long rear drive shaft is actually supported by a couple of bearings right here. That's to stop it from vibrating and flapping around at high rotational speed, which I suspect we're going to be achieving. We've also got a little cover here in the back that's probably to help protect the wires from the batteries from getting damaged. And then of course, hanging off the back, we've got this giant wing, and underneath this equally giant rear diffuser. This rear diffuser looks really cool, but it's not just here for looks. So So what does it take to go fast? What do you need to get this car up to something like 120 miles an hour? To put it simply, there are really only two things. You need traction and you need power. You need enough power to actually push the car up to that speed against the forces that are trying to stop it, which we'll talk about in a second. And you need the traction to actually get that power down to the ground so it'll keep moving the car forward. What you don't need for absolute top speed is low weight. This is a common misconception, but weight does not affect the ultimate top speed of a car. It only affects how fast the car gets up to that speed. Of course, practically, we do have a limit in the space we're running, so weight might play a factor based on those space restrictions. So what stops us from going fast? Ultimately, it's the air, and that's why we've got all this cool stuff on this car. The problem is the air resistance, the actual physical stuff you have to push out of the way as you're going forward, increases exponentially as you increase in speed. That means, basically speaking, to go twice as fast, you need 4 times as much power. Speed cars like this are designed to be as slippery as possible, so you need as little power as possible to actually get up to the speeds you want. However, the trade-off is in traction. The slipperier the car is, the less downforce it has, meaning the less traction you're going to get by physically pushing the tire into the ground. Downforce is created in 2 main ways. The first one is by physically pushing down on things like this wing, but the second one is achieved essentially the same way an airplane flies, by forcing air between the bottom of the chassis and the ground, which is why this chassis is so smooth. Air is split between the top and the bottom at the front, and the air going under the bottom of the car goes faster than the air over the top, which sucks the car down to the road. This is basically just an upside down wing, which is part of the way that aircraft create their lift. And this diffuser actually aids in that by helping the air expand out the back of the car, which increases the velocity underneath the car. Now, the last part of the puzzle is where the energy actually comes from to move the car forward, and in this case, we're going to be using these 2 big 6800 milliamp hour Spectrum G2 batteries. These are the batteries that are specified to get this thing up to 120 miles an hour, so that's what we're going to be using. Because these are G2 smart batteries, they don't have a separate balance cable, which means we do need a smart charger. And to charge them, I've got this S2100 dual charger. This thing looks pretty cool. It's got EC3 and EC5 connectors on both sides. It does have the ability to charge regular batteries that have balance cables. Nice little screen on it, and some screws in the bottom, so let's see how well this is made. This is definitely not a cheap charger, so I'm hoping to find some pretty good quality components in here, at least some nice Japanese capacitors, but we'll find out here in just a second once we get this bottom off of here. With that bottom off, we can see we've got a fairly nice topology here. The main power comes in here. This is going to be the main power board that converts AC to DC. We've got a separate board for the outputs. Everything does appear to be nicely shielded. The capacitors look like they are YST brand, which isn't the best brand in the world, but at least it has a branding on them. I think these are made in Taiwan. And then these solid capacitors have an ST on them, which means they're probably ST Microelectronics, which is a good brand. And while I would have liked to have seen Japanese capacitors in here, I'm sure this will work just fine and has probably been through plenty of testing, unlike possibly some no-name brand chargers, which could be less reliable. All right, I'm gonna get these batteries charged up and let's go see what this Limitless 120 can do right out of the box. Arrma's claiming 70 right out of the box. I don't think that's gonna be much of a problem given that this thing can do 120 miles an hour. We do have a slightly damp, slightly rough surface here given that it's been raining, but I think we can do 70 pretty easily. Let's give it a quick pass and see what happens. Full throttle. Yeah, this thing is stable and smooth, and I'm pretty sure 70 is gonna be no problem, assuming we have enough room to get up to that speed here. This is a fairly short place to run. We have a much longer area we're gonna run when we're doing the really high speed stuff. Let's get all the way down there and see if we can get a full pass out of it. Here we go. Full throttle. All right, I think that would have been full speed. Let's see what we got. 74 miles an hour, no sweat whatsoever. Okay, well that was pretty effortless like I expected it to be, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't take going those speeds seriously. With batteries, this thing weighs right at 14.5 pounds, and at 74 miles an hour, this thing's packing about 3.5 kilojoules of energy. That's pretty close to the same amount of energy as a 12 gauge slug, and if it hits something, it could do a lot of damage. Which is why it's really important to only run these cars on closed roads. Not only could you do a ton of damage if you hit someone's car, but if you hit a person, you could kill them. With that being said, at least within my own skill level, getting this thing up to 74 was completely effortless. That road really was not ideal, and it did it without any trouble whatsoever, but things are about to get a lot more serious. The box says the only thing we need to do to hit 100 miles an hour is change out to this larger 32 tooth pinion, which should be pretty straightforward, and I don't even think we need to take this motor all the way out. Though to make it easier to record, I probably will. Don't forget, you need good quality tools to get these screws out of here. You don't want to strip these out, otherwise you're gonna have a bad day. Hopefully we can get this out of here without taking the wires off. Yep, no problem. And after removing this E-clip, we can go ahead and pull the stock pinion right off of here. As you can see, this one's only 21 tooth, while the new one is 32 tooth. Something to keep in mind is that a larger pinion doesn't inherently mean you're gonna go faster. While it does increase your theoretical top speed, your actual top speed is still gonna be limited by how much power you have. I'm gonna go ahead and get this meshed back up, and then there's one more really important thing we need to do before we take this thing out to do 100. And that's gonna be to give this entire car a good once-over, because a mechanical failure at 100 or 120 miles an hour is gonna be just as bad as crashing it. I'm gonna check that all the wheels are tight, make sure I don't see any loose screws or bolts anywhere, cycle the suspension and make sure it feels nice and smooth. Do the same thing for the back. Check my steering, make sure it feels as tight as it did out of the box. There's no loose screws here. Nothing seems strange about it. The servo's still working fine. Flip it over and make sure there's no significant damage to the bottom, because this arrow is also going to be very, very important. And then finally, just roll it back and forth and make sure everything feels nice and smooth. This all feels great, so let's go see if we can join the 100-mile-an-hour club. All right, guys, we got a nice smooth section of road here. All I'm gonna have to do is avoid the reflectors in the middle. This is a closed piece of road. You can definitely feel that increased gearing, that's for sure. Give her a little bit of steering trim, get her going straight. Gonna go way down there. Now get her turned around, avoid the stuff on the side of the road, and here we go. Full throttle. Whoa, God. All right, return run, here we go. Hope you can see that. Full throttle. Oh, it's very, very stable. That's really nice. Let's get one more pass. Full throttle. All right, let's see what we got. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but I'm shaking, guys. Did we get 100 miles an hour? 104 miles an hour, easy money. Well guys, at 104 miles an hour, this thing's already officially the fastest RTR you can buy, beating out the X01 by a few miles an hour. But now to get that extra 15 miles an hour out of it, things are gonna get really serious. I have to say I'm pretty impressed with these 6800 milliamp hour Basher batteries from Spectrum. When they were on the charger, I checked the internal resistance and they're all around 1 milliohm, which is really, really good. And of course, what you're gonna need to get maximum performance out of something like this. After those last runs, I did notice that the motor smelled a little bit warm. These fans are okay, but I suspect if you're gonna be doing some serious speed running and a lot of it, you'd wanna upgrade to some higher power fans. Those are pretty cheap though. But now let's get the center differential out of here. Then we've got one more thing we need to do that's gonna make all this a lot more sketchy. Taking this center differential out and putting the spool in is going to accomplish two main things. First, as opposed to having some compliance between the front and rear end, which is going to make us lose some power out the front, the spool has the front and rear locked. But the main reason we're going to use the spool is to have this much smaller gear. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to put this tiny gear on this differential because it just wouldn't fit. This is going to lower our initial gear ratio a lot and should give us that higher top speed potential that we need. But in order to actually go faster in the real world, we're either going to need more power or less drag. Well, we're not changing the power system. Instead, what we're going to be doing is cutting out the vertical part of the rear wing and the vertical parts of the front wings. These wings create a ton of downforce, which is great for keeping the car on the ground at high speed, but that downforce comes with the trade-off of a ton of drag, which uses up a lot of power. Since wind resistance increases exponentially with speed, the faster we go, the more of a problem that becomes. Now, rather than cut up the wings that came with it, I went ahead and picked up a set of clear wings, and we're just going to trim these down to the lowest line, following the lines that come on them, which should make it pretty straightforward. And we're just going to follow that line with a new sharp razor blade. Be careful, sharp things are sharp. Take our body scissors and cut down from the edges, just down to that line on both sides. And this piece should snap right out of here. Just like that, looks pretty good. Of course, the downside to less downforce is less stability. This thing's gonna have less traction and it's gonna be more likely to wanna take off like an airplane at speed. But those are the trade-offs we have to deal with in order to keep going faster. Should be able to snap that right off there. There we go. Whether or not this is gonna end up making us fly like the wind or crash and burn is probably gonna be down to my skills. I'm sure the car is capable of it, but I'm not sure I am. We're just gonna find out in a minute. I think that clear front wing looks pretty good. I got the rear wing on as well. I'm gonna get the batteries charged, give this thing a good once over, then let's see if this old basher can do 120 miles an hour. All right, guys, here we go. 120 or bust. I'm gonna do this like the real speedrunners do and just do one pass and then check the speed. That way, if I end up balling it up on the second pass, we've actually got a number already. Let's go ahead and get her way down there. I am definitely more anxious this time than I was last time. All right, here we go. Full throttle. Oh! Oh! We only hit 99 that time. It did flip over, but it seems okay. So I think we're gonna give it another try. We're gonna start from this end and see what we can do. Here we go. Full throttle. Oh God. Oh God. Okay, I think that's it. I think we might have broken it that time. Actually, taking a closer look at this on the bench, the damage really isn't that bad, and we might be able to take another shot at that speed run. Unfortunately, the front aero is completely trashed, and we can't speed run without it. I went ahead and ordered replacement parts, which hopefully will be here in a couple of days, but in the meantime, mechanically, everything on this car looks fine, which is amazing for it having taken 2 100-mile-an-hour crashes. Those crashes really weren't the car's fault. I just ran out of skill, as having the reduced downforce really makes it harder to control. Edit RC here. After reviewing the footage, it's very clear what I was doing wrong. I was accelerating way too quickly, breaking traction, and after that, it was all over. Completely my fault. I am kind of glad I crashed though, because crashing is a big part of speedrunning, and it's good to know that this thing can handle some reasonably hard hits. Like I said earlier, this thing does say speed and bash, so we're gonna put this thing back into original configuration and see how this big ADAS system handles some bashing. I was planning on pulling most of the aero off for this to protect it, but we went ahead and already did that in the crashes, so we don't really need to worry about it now. So out comes the spool for now, and back in with the center differential. This is actually pretty easy to convert back and forth. And then we just need to switch back over to the stock pinion gear, pop this back together. Swap out our tires. I want to preserve these stock ones for speed runs only. While I'm doing this, I want to let you guys know we're getting very close to 50,000 subscribers and that 50K giveaway. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff. If you want to be part of that, make sure you get subscribed and hit that bell to get notified to see if you win. All right, I'm going to finish buttoning this thing up, put the rest of the tires on. Let's go burn some rubber. Now, I know most of you guys are not going to take a Limitless out bashing, but it does say bash on the box, like I said, so we're going to do a little bit of it. This thing has a ton of power. I'm barely on the throttle. Let's do a little full throttle. Oh yeah, she tries to blow those tires up. Now remember, these are the Amazon tires, so they're not probably going to be as good a quality as what you'd get with the stock tires, but they do seem pretty good. This thing is loud out here. Those metal gears are really cranking. Do a quick burnout. Yeah, they blow up pretty good. Let's do a little bit of a high-speed run. I'm not sure these tires are actually belted. Yeah, I don't think these tires are belted. Oh, and I just blew one off. Yeah, that did not last long. Let's see what happened. Okay, we blew the foam out of one of the tires. The tire itself is still okay. I guess these definitely are not designed for high speed, but at least we're just kind of jammed around bashing on concrete. They're not too bad. This thing definitely does drift well, and it feels kind of similar to what you would expect from something like an Infraction, because it is on a very similar chassis. And yeah, if you're just in a parking lot having a little bit of fun like this, you can do some bashing and not tear up any of the aero, so you can still do your speed runs if you want to. Overall, yeah, this is definitely fun for a little bit of casual speed bashing. All right, well, first of all, these Amazon special tires are trash. I really wasn't beating on them very hard, and one of them already spit out a foam. So I would definitely recommend sticking to the genuine D-Boots Hoons. These go on sale from time to time, and they're not terribly expensive. And as long as you are judicious with the throttle, they do last a while. Now, unfortunately, the parts I ordered for the front didn't come in yet, but fortunately, I was able to bend the parts we had back into place, put our original front wings on, and I think we're gonna try this again. I learned some good lessons from the previous crashes, and I think even if we don't get to 120, we can beat 104, so you know what? Let's just go ahead and give it a shot. All right, guys, here we go. I've got a lot more downforce this time. I went ahead and left quite a bit of the spoilers on. I just took the very top of them off. Let's get a little bit of steering trim in here. We're gonna go way down to the end, try to keep this nice and smooth. I'm not gonna talk on the actual run. That way I'm not distracted during the run. All right, here we go. Okay, well, a little bit of a wreck there, but I think we might have gotten up to full speed. Let's see what we got. All right, we only hit 99 miles an hour. We might have too much downforce. Let's try it again. Looks like it's still in good shape. Let's see if I can keep it off the curb this time. I'm gonna get as far down there as possible. Again, we might have too much downforce, or I might just not have enough skill for this one. We did 104 before, so we definitely had it going faster than it is now. Let's see what we can do. Okay, we were full throttle for a while there. Hopefully we got it. That was a really nice, smooth run. Let's bring it in. Well, unfortunately, I wasn't recording that time, so we're gonna do this one more time. I'm pretty sure I got up to that top speed that time. Unfortunately, we didn't get an actual reading, so we're gonna do this one more time. Let's hope we don't crash this time. I feel like I'm pushing my luck now. Here we go. Full throttle. And we were full throttle for a while. It actually cut out on me. Interesting. Let's see what we got this time. 113 miles an hour. I still think we have too much downforce, but you know what? I'm gonna take the win on that and call it good. All right, guys, all I have to say is that this thing is an absolute wild ride. It is amazing to drive at those high speeds. I know 113 isn't 120, but I'm already at the very ragged limit of my skill. And if we chop down this arrow to try to go any faster, I'm just gonna end up crashing it. If I had a wider road or a longer road with fewer obstacles, maybe. But for where I'm running and my personal skill level, I am thrilled with 113 miles an hour. At the end of each one of those runs, the ESC was cutting out. I'm not sure if that was a voltage problem or just a load problem, but either one of those is clearly being caused by having too much downforce and too much drag. So again, that's not the car's fault. And another thing I have to say is that I am absolutely thrilled with the durability of this car. This thing went through 300+ mile-an-hour crashes, one of them pretty bad, and it's still going. So what we have here is the fastest RTR car in the world, a car that can easily do 74 miles an hour out of the box, a car that can fairly easily do over 100 miles an hour with just a minor change and a little bit of skill, and then a car that gives you the parts to get yourself in trouble when you really want to push things. As a non-speedrunner, I had a lot of fun doing this. This got my adrenaline going like nothing I've done in a long time, and I'm really glad I was able to share this little journey with you. Why don't you join me on one of these journeys?